exciting this journey has been. There's already been so much learning and so much more learning to happen. Um, AKA, I'm saying a prayer that the mic does what we need it to do, which is just record seamlessly with the most highest quality sound. So today I wanted to speak about um, a topic that was inspired from a beautiful soul that asked me about my journey and asked me about what it was that brought me to the work that I do now. Um, what was the inspiration? And um, they referred to a lot of people coming to this work because they are maybe healing trauma or were in very traumatic situations as children, or had experienced abuse or these sort of things. And while I also concur with that, I think that there is a lot of people that come to spirituality in order to never, never, what's the word? To break ancestral trauma, to not continue on a pattern that maybe they experienced as a child or that was present in their family. And for me, this wasn't the case. It was more so, the old Native American proverb of the only real enemy is the one within. And I may have butchered that a little bit, but it's the one within. I myself was my greatest enemy in my experience. And through a series of circumstances when I was younger, I created this barrier between me and the world because of feelings of unworthiness and a desire to be in a different place and a different time, even a different body at some points while I was growing up. And so it through this self-created suffering, I was almost forced to a place of such uncomfortability, and thankfully had this awareness and epiphany that life is not designed to just be suffering. I deeply felt that truth, and maybe I'd heard it from a speaker or a teacher. I definitely was trying to consume content that would assist my mindset, and most of this happened when I moved out to LA. And I was with myself a lot more, and I was very even more isolated. I was away from my family and those that were really obligated to love me and that do love me. But at that season and that time, I was a very challenging person to love and had no love for myself and definitely didn't have that spillover to give to others. And those of you that maybe only know this version of me now may find that hard to believe. But I have found that the most loving and service-oriented people often come from the exact opposite on the pendulum. So that was the case for me. And when I had that awareness of life is not for suffering. We are here to enjoy our journey. We are here to enjoy the unfoldment of it. And this shitty mindset that I've developed, not even through my conditioning or my family. I'm not a victim of any of that. Just simply a victim of myself and not having the correct tools to know how to use my gifts that I think a lot of us have, but that I certainly have and wasn't tapping into. And so it was just manifesting as this really powerful creative life force energy that wasn't getting expressed and didn't know how to be expressed. And so it was just ruminating within me, creating more and more frustration and anger. And so when I was in LA, I thought I was going for fashion school, for marketing, for merchandising, and to expand on that area that I knew I really loved and was very passionate about. And I did get that. And also, I got a life raft thrown at me. I had my entire life trajectory shift when I was there. And that was when I really started to develop and cultivate my spirituality. I began to recognize my addiction to judgment, my addiction to controlling my body, manipulating my body, and isolating. I think that isolation can become an addiction. It certainly was for me as well. And even still, it's such a deep rooted um, past of mine. I have to be very mindful, even still, where I'll just pull back a lot and I'll be in the world and I'll serve the world. And then I go to the extreme opposite and need a day, or, it's less and less here recently, but I'll need a whole day just to myself. And if I'm honest with myself, it goes a little too far sometimes, where I'm pulling back and I'm not giving and I'm not being present in my life. And so this is the work that I'm doing now. And I can recognize myself as having grown so much from where I used to be, where it would be years of my life isolated with just little bursts of moments where I felt extreme joy and love and connection, and then back to the self-hatred and judgment of others, and controlling and manipulating my body. And all of that power that I was expressing in a negative, toxic way is now something that I know to channel with my mind, with my thoughts, with manifesting. And this is why I can honestly say I know I'm a powerful manifester, because I know how much power I have in my body, and I know how much I can focus. I can focus my thoughts, and that almost shadow side of me that was addicted to judgment and the isolation and the control of the body and what I was eating. And I now take that power and that determination and channel it to manifesting beautiful creations for myself, manifesting new ways to express and help serve others. I manifest it into the community. I put it into my studies so that I can share information with others and help them on their journey. And one of the biggest things I wanted to highlight is that the reason I do what I do now with my priestess work, where it bloomed out of, was from the soil of that season of suffering that I had transmuted into fertilizer. And the blonde priestess was a seed that was planted within that soil. And so, through that intention, through my business and its expansion, is that heartbeat of wanting to help those that also feel isolated, wanting to help those that feel like they judge themselves, they're hard on themselves, they're critical of others, they don't let love in. And while I'm not saying in any means I've arrived anywhere aside from just better than I used to be yesterday and the day before, which is all we can ever do, by the way, but I have a deep appreciation for my business and my path that was born from that place. And I believe that's why it has longevity. And I believe that's why it has had success. And I know that is why it will have more success. The, the, the soil, I love that analogy, was genuine. It was authentic. There was a very long, long for a manifesting generator who loves to quantum leap through things, season where I put in the work, where I walked my talk, where I felt those feelings of isolation and suffering, and had to anchor into the knowing that life was not about that. And also honor the experience that it felt like that. And it brings up so much for me because there's so much passion I have, and empathy and compassion for myself, for that version of me, and also for others that might be in this space right now. And I hope if someone does find this and is in that space, you have to, with your entire life force, attach to that anchor of knowing that life is not about suffering, that life is here to support you, and you're here to be successful, and you're here for a much greater purpose than you might be embodying right now. And the combination of teachers that I found during that season, and maybe it was LA, maybe it was being so isolated and having so much free time as a student, that I was able to really devote to my studies of how the fuck do I fix my life? The self-help section in Barnes and Noble is my favorite section. It still is. And also, I love the fiction section too, because there's such a nice feminine energy in reading stories and fairy tales. But anyway, it is uh, it is important to take that time if you are in a season where you perhaps have become bitter or angry or frustrated towards life, to devote your time like your life depends on it, because it does, to understanding yourself. And this is also why I teach human design and astrology and gene keys. And this is why I hold circles and share cacao and all of these different tools and medicines, so that people may feel supported in a journey that I know personally can feel very lonely, very confusing, it's very isolating. And it's moment by moment when you're in those, if you want to call them darker days, or I see them as a very vulnerable place where you're constantly having to retrain your thoughts. And there's so many wonderful teachers like Joe Dispenza, and I even love Wayne Dyer and some of his old archival talks of just shifting that perspective. Of course, Abraham Hicks, um, Louise Hay, Gabby Bernstein, Marianne Williamson, all of these teachers were pivotal to me. They were my friends, they were my guides, my parents, my coaches. And there is just no excuse to not live a better life. All of that information, all of those teachers I just mentioned, you can get their information for free. You don't have to live in a state of suffering. You do have to be sick of your own shit enough to shift. And this is the place I'm talking about. And I think this is the place where spiritual bypassing comes in, where no, I'll just stay attached to my stories. I'll just blame on someone else. I'll just skim the surface and keep telling my trauma stories to therapists or to friends. And, I'll, you know, never actually take the action to sit with why I am the way I am. And it's okay. That's a process in healing as well, and that has purpose for many. And I know I definitely had a season where I just was telling my fucking story and woe is me and I'm a victim and help me, why me? Why does everyone get what they want and I don't? And just on and on and on. And eventually you start to realize, whether there's truth in those victim stories or not, you have to be sick of being trapped. And once you're there, you'll shift. Guaranteed. You'll make the time to read the fucking book. You'll make the time to start to observe your thoughts. You'll put the energy into saying, how can I speak better about myself? Can I get in the mirror for 5 minutes and tell myself how much I love myself? Is that possible? Am I worth that? Am I willing to do that for myself so that I may love myself more and be able to love others more? And I know that that may sound harsh or, sort of guilt provoking, but that was my experience. I had a lot of power and strength to fight for my weaknesses. I had a lot of fight in me to justify why I should feel bad. And once that ran its course, I was just left with a sad, sad, lonely person. And when I sat with her, I knew she wasn't my authentic self. I knew she was just a shadow of a version that I was designed to be. And that was one of the hardest moments I think I've ever experienced. It was took a lot of honesty. It was extremely triggering, and it was dark. And it was within that moment, that awareness, that I realized this is not it. This is not how we live. This is not how we impact the world. This is not aligned with all the people and places you want to touch in the world, Christina. And from that place, I decided no more. It's not okay anymore. I'm not going to settle for this. I don't know where I'm going to go and I don't know what I'm going to do. But all I know is that this experience, this contrast, this feeling of life is not true. And I worked really hard to start to pull myself out of that shadow. And it was the very best time that I've ever spent. I've built up such an unshakable core. Now, I can be shook. I'm a human, and certain things have a way of getting into those cracks. But at my core, it's so solid because I've gone to the absolute bottom of myself and started building my foundation from there. And so, if you're there, if you're in that place or you're getting close, I promise you it will be the best work you ever do to get honest with yourself and to tell yourself, I'm worth the work it takes to shift this shitty mindset, to shift out of this victim story, to begin to be the person that I see in my dreams. Oh, I love you all. I'm on this journey with you. And if there's any way that I can be of any support, I'm always available for people who are ready to expand, who are ready to shift, and who are ready to keep going on their journey. I love you. You got this. Keep going. A very emotional, moody, broody, honest reflection to wrap up week one. Love you all.